What are some of the biggest challenges you're hearing from the dentists?
I think the biggest challenge today is inflation, and particularly wage inflation. The actual wage inflation in dentistry is outstripping normal inflation by a vast multiple. The dentist loses because of the deeply discounted fees they're subjected to under the PPO plan.
The problem is, if you're giving up 45% of your revenues to an insurance company, you can't afford to go coach your kids' soccer because you're not going to be able to pay your payroll.
When insurance started, it started with a noble purpose. It was to help get more people to visit the dentist. It was set up very nobly. It had very high intentions. But over time, that situation has changed radically. When you've successfully resigned from a plan, you've improved your practice. But I always tell my clients, if your goal is to go all the way to fee-for-service, then I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader, because that is the outcome that will produce the best result for you, but it's not appropriate for all practices. We've developed a blueprint. It's a 6-step blueprint to follow to successfully resign from PPO plan. That's 6-step blueprint.
Are you a dentist who's striving to build a more thriving, profitable practice without feeling overwhelmed by the numbers? Hey, good news, there is a better way. The Academy of Dental CPA member firms know dentistry. In fact, it's all they do. Our members are experienced CPA firms who specialize exclusively in serving dentists across every stage of ownership. From startups to acquisitions, to optimizing associate income, to advanced tax strategy, practice growth, and transitions, we're here to support your financial success. When you work with an ADCPA member, you get more than a tax preparer. You get a strategic partner, someone who understands dental industry benchmarks, overhead management, collections, dental insurance, compensation models, and all the unique business challenges you face every single day. We bring clarity to the business side of dentistry. While you focus on clinical excellence, we ensure your financial foundation remains strong with advisory that turns data into confident decisions. Join over 11,000 dentists nationwide who have a financial expert in their corner. Visit adcpa.org to find a trusted dental CPA near you. That's adcpa.org, because your numbers should work as hard as you do.
This podcast is sponsored by Bank of America Practice Solutions. When you need financing for your dental practice, you really want to work with someone who fully understands your industry. For over 25 years, Bank of America Practice Solutions has helped dentists across the nation reach their goals through smart financial solutions and expert guidance. Whether you own a practice or are just getting started, Bank of America Practice Solutions can provide customized financial help for your short-term needs and long-term aspirations. Email dg.connect@bofa.com to find expert guidance, personal attention, and real solutions. That's dg.connect@bofa.com. And hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of the Art of Dental Finance and Management podcast with Art Wiederman, CPA. I'm your host, Art Wiederman. Welcome to my podcast. If you're new and this is your first time listening, you are in for a treat. One of my dearest friends in dentistry is Gary Takacs. We know Gary as the podcaster, and, or the podfather is what we call him. And my story with Gary is that in 2017, we had our Academy of Dental CPA meeting in Huntington Beach, California. And I had a bunch of people over to my house in South Orange County. And Gary came over and he's standing in my kitchen. He says, now this is almost like 9 years ago. He says, Art, you should really do a podcast. And you know what I said to him? I said, Gary, what is a podcast? I didn't even know what it was. Well, Gary brought me into this. He gave me the resources and the tools to start doing what I've been loving to do for now. We're in our 8th year with thousands of people listening. And, Gary is just a gift to the dental profession. And Gary's got lots of things. He could teach you about scheduling. He could teach you about financial arrangements. He could teach you about, how to bring bonding into your practice. But what he's really, really passionate about is helping you to potentially change your relationship with insurance companies. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because doctors with overheads going up through the roof, we're in early 2026. Our world is not a certain place. It really isn't. And, we don't know what's going on. Overheads are going up. I heard one person say overheads are going to go up 28% in the next, 5 years or so, if not more. And, if you have a business model where your overhead keeps going up, but you can't raise your prices, that's not a good business model. So we're going to talk about that today. I do want to share a couple things. Number one, make sure that if you are at the Academy of General Dentistry National Meeting in Las Vegas at Caesars Palace on June 26th, I will be doing a day-long transition seminar for buyers and sellers of dental practices for the Academy of General Dentistry. I will hope that the air conditioning works because it'll be about 140 degrees, but it is what it is. I want to thank my wonderful sponsors, Bank of America Practice Solutions. I want to thank Interview, and I want to thank the Academy of Dental CPAs, this is the official podcast, the Academy of Dental CPAs. Please follow our podcast on Facebook, like us on Facebook, like us on Instagram, watch us on YouTube. That's why I'm wearing a nice shirt today, and on TikTok. So there you go. So we hope you'll tell your friends about our podcast, because I think we're doing really, really good work. Let's get to my friend Gary, because I want him talking a lot more than I do. Gary Takacs and I have been in the dental profession about the same amount of time, just over about 40 years. He runs the Takacs Learning Center. He has been an owner of multiple dental practices. He is probably one of the premier dental coaches in the United States. He's spoken all over the world, every dental meeting. His podcast, the Thriving Dentist Podcast, has been number one for as long as I can remember. He also does one on reducing insurance dependency. Any other nice things I'm supposed to say about you, Gary?
Art, you're so kind. I was just doing some quick math in our head. This might surprise our listeners, but the two of us put together have over 90 years of experience working with dentists. Over 90 years. That's just you and I.
And our hair shows it. And this is one of the few humans I know that has less hair than I do.
I think that's a byproduct.
Which I always remind you.
That's a byproduct
right.
of the 90 years. But our friendship is so very dear to me. And every time I get a chance to see you, it makes my day. In fact, to kind of punctuate this for your listeners, most of your listeners will know that I'm not a dentist. I've never been a dentist. My background is the business and the behavioral sides of dentistry. So the business side and the people side. Started my own, if I could do quick background,
that's what I want you to do.
All of the 1980s, I worked in 2 large dental consulting firms, essentially learning the foundation of my craft as a dental consultant or as a dental coach. By 1989, I had worked with over 500 practices in all 50 states. I still had lots to learn, but I thought, well, maybe I wanted to get to a point where I knew enough to start my own consulting firm. And in 1989, I thought, well, maybe now's a good time to take the leap. My wife was a kindergarten teacher. We had 2 kids at the time, later to become 4. I cut the safety net, a really great corporate job, cut those ties, and took the bold leap. Somehow we made it. We learned how to live on a kindergarten teacher's income. I have to give my wife all the credit for that. And she's very resourceful. But we made it, and I've had my own consulting firm ever since. But in 2007, I learned that in Arizona, where I live, I'm joining this podcast from Scottsdale today from my home office. I learned that in Arizona, you don't have to be a dentist to own a practice. What? Thought you had to be a dentist. No. And I decided I wanted to own a practice. I partnered with a young dentist, and we bought a dilapidated fixer-upper practice, and it needed everything, but it had about 1,000 active patients, and it was a good starting point.
I think you told me one time it was doing about $350,000 or $400,000 a year when you bought it.
It was a $500,000 a year practice, and it had been
it was something small.
Yeah, and it had been static for 10 years. It didn't move. It was 501 one year, 499 the next. It was just hovering.
That's static.
Yeah.
The CPA says that's static. Yeah.
And when that practice closed, in other words, when the financial transaction closed and Dr. Paul and I owned the practice, the very first person I called was Art Wiederman. And I called Art.
I know him.
You know him.
I've heard of him.
I called Art. I said, Art, I can't wait to share this news with you. As of about 10 minutes ago, I became a practice owner. And I remember your comment. You said, well, Gary, wait a minute. did I miss something over the last 4 years? Were you in dental school the last 4 years? And then, and then you said, oh,
I
wait a
remember
minute,
that.
you're in Arizona. I said,
That's right.
I'm actually calling you for 2 reasons. Number one, because I want to share the news with someone that I know will appreciate the news, and that was Art. And the second reason
Yeah.
is I wanted a recommendation for an Academy of Dental CPA accounting firm. You said, Gary, it's Bill Owens, Owens and Bundell. It's Owens and Bundell, a longtime Academy of Dental CPA, and they've been the accounting firm ever since.
I love those guys.
As do I. One of the best moves we ever made in practice ownership was using the services of Owens and Bundell.
Oh, that's great. Well, and that goes with any of the 25 members of the Academy, dental CPAs, and the people we work with. They're just wonderful. Gary, I want to cover a lot of, because you have just so much knowledge. We're in 2026. We're living in a different world and everything is different. What are the biggest challenges? You're talking to hundreds of dentists every month, thousands of dentists a year between your consulting and your lectures and your podcast. What are some of the biggest challenges you're hearing from the dentists?
Well,
today.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we're absolutely in the middle of some very uncertain times. I think that's an understatement to say things are uncertain. But yeah, these are uncertain times. And uncertain times create, business challenges. They also create business opportunities. But I can answer that question very quickly. I think the biggest challenge today is inflation, and particularly wage inflation. You alluded to it earlier. I wish there was actually an inflationary statistic to measure the increase in dental practice overhead. I wish I could get that specific. Of course, that doesn't exist. We don't have data that would narrow it down to what is dental office, inflation. The best that we have is the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. But I can tell you that the actual wage inflation in dentistry is outstripping normal inflation by a vast multiple. And like
I
you
would
said,
absolutely agree with you.
dentists are getting squeezed because if they choose to participate with PPO plans, then they're not setting their fees anymore. And yet their costs are going up geometrically, but the fees are not rising correspondingly. Art, if you owned a restaurant and your cost of goods in the restaurant, it would be a fine dining establishment if Art owned it. And, let's say you wanted to source, wild-caught Alaskan salmon. Maybe you wanted to source,
one of my favorites,
Alaskan halibut. Maybe you have a really good local source for farm-to-table, organic produce. Maybe a local source for organic grass-fed beef. And if the cost went up, then as a business owner, you would adjust your menu prices accordingly. You'd be fair about it, but you would adjust your menu prices accordingly. And that's an option that most dentists statistically haven't been able to do because they've lost control of their fees. The PPOs are determining their fees.
We're going to talk about that today. So let's start with an overview of how dental insurance companies operate and how they affect the operations of both the practice and the patient. Because remember, they're getting it on both ends. They're getting the premiums from the employers or the insureds, and they're setting the prices of the dentist. So talk about how that dynamic is working.
Well, if you and I go back long enough to remember the beginnings of this, when insurance started, it started with a noble purpose. It was to help get more people to visit the dentist. It was set up very nobly. It had very high intentions. But over time, that situation has changed radically. I look at it real simply, Art. There's 3 constituents that, somehow tied together in the insurance world. There's the insurance company. Actually, there's 4. There's 4. In the insurance world, there's the insurance company that provides the plan. There's the dentist or dental office that provides the care. There's the patient that receives the care. And there's the employer that pays for the insurance, typically. Now, these days, there is such a thing as a marketplace where an individual can go out and get the insurance, but most dental insurance is provided by an employer. If you look at those 4 entities, the insurance company, the dentist, the patient, and the employer, there's only one winner in that, and the winner is the insurance company.
Obviously.
The dentist loses because of the deeply discounted fees they're subjected to under the PPO plan. And today, that average adjustment, it varies, and it depends on the quality of the plan and so on. But it's often 45 to 48% adjustment off of your UCR. 45 to 48%.
All right. So you have raised that number since the last time we chatted, and it hasn't been that long since we chatted. We used to talk, you and I, 38 to 42. So you're saying that these adjustments are even higher.
And I would say maybe a safe place, if I want to be somewhat conservative about it today, would be a 45% adjustment. So that
That's
means
insane.
that if your patient doesn't have insurance, they're uninsured patient, and let's talk about a service with a round number, let's say that service is $1,000, then that patient pays you $1,000 for XYZ service. But if that
Right.
patient is part of a PPO plan, you don't get $1,000 anymore. You get 55% of that. You get $550.
$550.
And for the rest is, I like to think of that adjustment cost. I like my clients to think of that as a marketing expense. As an accountant, you would disagree with me on that, like just tactically or, just in terms of pure definition, because it never shows up on the P&L statement. It
Does
doesn't,
not.
because you're not
No, it
actually writing, you're
should.
not
I
writing a
wish it
check.
would, but it
Yeah,
doesn't.
you're not writing a check to the insurance company. It's even worse. They take it out before you ever got it. They take it out ahead of time.
As we know, Gary, so now that we have a 45% discount, we get to go to our employees and say, "Hey, Susie at the front desk, just want to let you know your paycheck's going to be 45% less today because I had to take a discount." That's how it works in the offices you consult with, right, Gary?
Well, absolutely, because there's such an abundance of new people applying for jobs at dental offices. Did anyone hear the sarcasm in my voice?
We're going to get thrown off the air, Gary. You know that. But I mean, but this is the point.
And of course, we have to pay a competitive wage to attract the best team members. And those numbers are going up. As you well know, with your work with the ADCPA, you have your finger on the pulse on that. And, it's interesting. When Paul and I bought our practice, one of our goals was we wanted to pay our team members as much as we could because I wanted to attract and keep the best team members. And I think that's a foundation of a thriving practice is let's attract and keep the best team members. And that's getting harder and harder to do. I call it reducing insurance dependence, or instead of calling it go fee for service. Because it's a bit of nomenclature here, but I think it's important. You don't have to go all the way to fee for service to significantly improve your practice. When you've successfully resigned from a plan, you've improved your practice. But I always tell my clients, if your goal is to go all the way to fee for service, then I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader because that is the outcome that will produce the best result for you. But it's not appropriate for all practices. It's not something every practice can do.
If you're in a rural area where nobody can pay fee for service and there's one big employer in the area, you're probably not going to do that.
Yeah.
So what is the sign, Gary? So you have somebody who's 80-90% of their practice is PPO plans and they're giving up this 45%. How do they continue to operate? How do they do what they do?
Well, the great news is that there is a groundswell movement, and it's still kind of grassroots. It's certainly not majority, but there's a groundswell movement of dentists that have just said, enough. And let me back up to something, because you and I have a very similar chronology in our profession here. We've been both doing this a long time. And there's some things that are happening today that really do disturb me. For example, there's a very large private dental Facebook group. I'll leave the name nameless, but there's a large private Facebook group. It involves over 60,000 dentists are part of that group. And a question was asked recently in that group. Knowing what you know now of being a dentist, wherever you are in your career, early career, mid-career, late career, wherever, dental student, wherever you are in your career, knowing what you know now, would you advise your son or daughter to become a dentist?
Ugh.
Or do you know that the answer was 67% no? And in some cases, there was an explicative in front of the no, and I won't say it to keep your G rating in your podcast, but there was an explicative in front of the no.
We know the words.
That makes me sad.
That is sad.
That makes me sad because, pardon my enthusiasm around this, but I believe that dentistry rocks. And let me tell you why I believe dentistry rocks. Because doctors, you have the ability to change people's lives every day. You have the ability to make a positive impact on people's lives every day. Could be something you do clinically. The patient comes to you with a less than ideal smile, and maybe you've had some great training on cosmetic dentists from our mutual friend, Dr. David Hornbrook. I'll throw David in there because
he's pretty good.
He's amazing. But maybe
he is amazing.
Maybe you've had some great, or Sherilyn Sheets. Let's talk another dentist that's amazing in your backyard. Yep. Dr. Sherilyn is an amazing clinician. So maybe the patient goes to a doctor, it doesn't like the appearance of their smile, and doctor provides a gorgeous smile, literally transformational. And you see the difference in their eyes. When we look at the before and after photos, the before photos, there's sadness in their eyes. The after photos, they're sparkling. So it could be something like that, or it could be something way more fundamental. It could be something behavioral. Maybe you have a patient that's having some tough times in life right now, and you are a compassionate set of ears to listen to them. You providing them empathy and support. Could be a patient that's very fearful, and they learn through, again, your wonderful care, the different technology you have in your office, they learn to not be fearful of going to the dentist, and you're literally changing their life. And sometimes, this might seem like a stretch. I love to say that we have the ability to change lives every day, but there are also situations where we have the ability to save lives. Now, we don't normally think
Yep.
of dentistry as life saving. That's what our friends in the ER do, our colleagues in the ER. But we have opportunity to save. I'll give one simple example. If we're serious about screening for oral cancer, you'll have the ability to save lives. I talk with my dental students about this. I still do some guest lecturing at Midwestern University School of Dental Medicine. And if you're in dental school right now, statistically, in your career, you're going to have the opportunity through screening to identify 14 cases of oral cancer in your career. And if we identify it early, and we're catching it in stage 1 or pre-stage 1, the treatment is highly successful. But if we catch it late, it's much more challenging. So you have the possibility of saving lives. Another example would be through sleep dentistry, specifically through sleep apnea. If you have obstructive sleep apnea, there are dental solutions. Many people can't or won't tolerate a CPAP. They can't or won't. And now there are some dental solutions, multiple different treatment modalities that could successfully create a great outcome for patients so they reduce their risk of sleep apnea.
I raised my hand, Gary, because you know the story that it was a dentist that diagnosed my sleep apnea and probably saved my life. So I'm such a big fan. Let's say that we've got doctors who are listening to this and that this is the last straw. You know, this man, Gary Takacs, he is the Messiah. He knows what's going on. He's absolutely right. What the heck am I doing? Discounting my fees 45% and my overhead's going up and my landlord just raised my rent by $3,000 a month. All right, I want to do something about it. What's the first step, Gary?
Yeah, first step is to assess your readiness. Assess your readiness. Because again, I want to be clear, sometimes a little information can be dangerous. I'm not saying everybody should reduce their insurance dependence by any means. However, assess your readiness. Now, remember that statistic? You just threw it out. You said, say the office has 80 some odd percent PPO plans. I've actually, in my coaching work, have coached over 400 practices in all 50 states on this specific project of successfully reducing insurance dependence. Many of those have gone all the way to fee-for-service, and others have radically reduced their footprint. And there's readiness that we can do. But the statistic I want to give you is in that database, my own personal database of this, the average percent of the practice of the patients that had PPO plans was, wait for it, 82%. 82% was the average. So if you're looking at that, you're saying, oh my gosh.
Sounds about right to me. Yeah. I mean, from my experience as a dental CPA, you know.
Yeah, and that number is going up. But now look at it. If you're looking at it and say, oh my gosh, I could never do anything with plans if 82% of my patients. Well, wait a minute. Assess your readiness. So I use 3 readiness factors. And Art, for fun, let's use the stoplight analogy, red, yellow, green. So green is go, yellow is caution, and red is stop. And what we're doing is we're assessing your readiness for it. The first factor is how relationship-driven is your practice? You know, if we look at a spectrum, and if we have a horizontal line here, and on the left-hand side of the spectrum is very relationship-driven, and on the right-hand side of the spectrum is transactional. Where do you fall? Now, I know this is subjective, not objective. Where do you fall? Are you more relationship-driven, or are you more transactional? And if you can step back and look at your practice objectively, where do you stand on this? And what most of my clients have said, you know, Gary, I'd like to say we are perfectly relational, but that wouldn't be accurate. We can improve, but I think we're highly relational. What does that mean? It means we connect with we know their names, we know their spouse's name, we know their kids' names, we know the dog's name. We know what college they went to. If they went to SC, we don't bring up UCLA. I'm just saying, Art. Now, if they went to Oregon...
I went to Long Beach State, so my team is undefeated since 1993 when we shut our football program down.
But if they happen to go to Oregon, like one of your guests on your podcast is, what school do we not bring up?
We don't bring up Oregon State or Washington.
That's right. So how relationship-driven? Now, I've had doctors... Is there a scientific way to assess that? I said, no, it's very subjective, but I'm going to ask you to be honest about it. And if you're very relational, then you get a green light, okay, on one of the three criteria. But there is actually a way, if I'm asking Dr. Wiederman, without looking in your computer, can you name 5 school teachers in your practice? Can you name 5 police or firemen, first responders? Can you name 5 people that own their own business without looking in the computer? And if you can rattle off names like that, my guess is you're highly relational. Now, granted, some of my clients will say, I don't always remember their names, but I remember their faces. I said, I understand. But if you get ready for your day, when you're getting ready for your day, I would love for you to have somewhere in your computer system where you have notes on your patients, personal information, spouse name, kids' names, dogs' names, hobbies, interests. Maybe you know that your patient Maria is taking care of an elderly mother right now. But if it was me, if I was your patient, and Dr. Wiederman, you were my dentist, you'd have those notes when you come in to do the hygiene check today. Gary, it's so good to see you. How's your wife, Therese? I've got to ask you about her yoga studio. I've been meaning to get into her yoga studio because I've taken a couple classes from her, and every time I do, I feel better. I feel more limber, more loose. And I have to ask you about your grandson, Kanan. How's Kanan doing? How am I going to feel as a patient?
Like over the moon.
Top
I've never been in a healthcare office before where they just say, Wiederman, like Bueller, right? Yeah, so there you go.
Or how about when you walk into the office and the person's staring at the computer and they look up and they don't greet you? I mean, hey, if you have a male patient named Art on your schedule at 2:00 and a handsome fellow walks in through the front door a few minutes before 2, guess who it is? Just take a wild guess. It's Art. Art, it's so good to see you.
You need glasses, Gary, I'm telling you, but
But,
all right, so
it's not right. So there's the readiness factor there, how relationship driven. Second is much more qualitative. We can actually measure it. Demand in your schedule. How far out? I'm going to ask you 2 questions. How far out are you booked today for a non-emergency new patient appointment? Non-emergency new patient. How far out are you booked? And the second one is, when is your first available hygiene appointment on your schedule? If, like many offices today, if you're booked out to the moon, let's say September, October, or your first of it is going to be 3-4 weeks from now, that isn't necessarily good news because today people are impatient. People want to be seen.
They'll leave. They'll go somewhere else, and they won't call you and tell you that.
They'll leave. They'll just go to the next office on they'll go on the next office on their Google search. But if you have that demand in your schedule, it means you're more ready to go out of network because you're going to lose patients when you go out of network. Now, if you do, it's very manageable if you do it right, but you're going to lose some. And if you have more demand in your practice, you can afford to lose it. So I don't want to treat it capriciously. We care about every patient, but you're going to lose some. So the second is, what does your schedule tell you about demand in your schedule? If on the other hand, you say, well, today's Wednesday and I can get a new patient in tomorrow morning, I'd want to build more demand in the schedule before you resign. And then the third, so again, if you have demand in your schedule, you're going to get a green light in the red light stoplight analogy. If you don't have demand in your schedule, you get a red light, and maybe there's a yellow middle ground in there. And then the third criteria is, do you have proven marketing in place to replace the patients you're going to lose when you go out of network? You want to preempt it and have that done in place before you leave. We also have to replace the historic flow of patients that's come in through the PPO plans. If you get 10 new patients a month from XYZ PPO plan, just pick a name. If you get 10 patients a month from that plan, in other words, they went to that plan's website, chose you, as soon as you resign, you'll be delisted from that plan's website and that number will go to 0. But if you annualize that, Art, you're pretty good at math. If we have 10 new patients a month coming, last time I checked, if that happens for a whole year, that's 120 patients we've got to replace. How did I do on math, Art?
That is correct, sir. You did 100%, you get an A.
So those are the 3 readiness factors, and that's where I'd start. Now, we've developed a blueprint. It's a 6-step blueprint to follow to successfully resign from PPO plan. That's 6-step blueprint because it involves a lot of team member training. We have to know data. We have to know how many plans we're on. We have to know how many patients we're on. We have to know what our adjustments are. There are some plans, they're becoming more and more rare, but there are some plans that have a fee schedule that's tolerable, that we could make it work. And if we happen to have those, we'll put those lower on the list.
Or we might just keep them. 90% of something is better than 0% of nothing. I think that
absolutely.
makes sense.
We might just keep that.
So with that in mind, I know that you have something really special that you are launching, I believe, today.
It is literally the day we're recording this podcast is our launch.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you take a minute and talk about how folks can work with you and what you're doing. I think you and I are about the same age, and you are reinventing yourself, my friend, a little bit, I think, or a lot of it, kind of.
Well,
Or are you just taking 45 years of experience and saying, here it is? So talk about what you're doing.
yeah. So, Art, I'm passionate about helping more dentists develop their ideal practice. And, in this season of my career, my goal is to help more dentists develop their ideal practice, whatever that is, their ideal practice. And I want to change that statistic around where, 2/3 of the dentists wouldn't advise their son or daughter to become dentists. I think it's an amazing career. Now, if you have an aptitude towards it, I think it could be an amazing career. I feel like our profession is dividing into the haves and have-nots. The successful practices, let's call them the top 10% practices. The top 10% practices are having an amazing time. They're loving what they do. They absolutely love what they do.
Yep.
But the others are in various stages of discontent about the profession. And I want to change that. I use that top 10% analogy specifically, Art, because the new project is called the Top 10% Practice Coaching. Top 10% Practice Coaching. And Art, it won't come as a surprise to you. You are a wizard at math. I'll bet that when you reflect back on your many years of advising your clients through your accounting services, accounting and other services, I bet when you think of some of the top practices you've worked with, there's been a common denominator. And the common denominator is they've worked with a coach or coaches. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but is that accurate?
Yes, it is. Most of the dentists that are really successful have either worked with a coach or attended a ton of management CE, which is almost like working with a coach. Yeah, I agree.
And so
I absolutely agree.
And if we think of it outside of dentistry, we think, you and I enjoy sports. Can we think of an athlete that doesn't have a coach?
They've got many coaches.
Think about
They have a mental health coach. They have a physical therapy coach. They have a shooting for basketball coach or hitting coach. Yeah, of course.
You and I enjoy a sport together. We enjoy hitting a little white ball around on the green grass. Called golf, and we've had some fun times together on the golf course. But you think about, a PGA caliber golfer, they have multiple coaches, and it helps them achieve the different aspects of, being successful out on tour. But sadly, many dentists have never availed themselves of a coach, and I would suggest that the reason is actually fairly simple, and that's that quality coaching is expensive. I'll be very transparent, with your listeners. My full-service coaching fee, it's a $20,000 annual fee. It's not inexpensive. And you have some benchmarks. We talked a little bit before we hit record today. There's others that can be much more expensive than that. There's 40
double or triple. I've seen it without question.
We've seen triple. We've seen $60,000 annual fees.
Yes.
And I would argue that there's a great ROI on that. Typically, what we see in my client base is we're looking for at least a 5-to-1 ROI, meaning invest 20 and get at least 100 in measurable return on that investment. In many cases, it's a multiple of that. But the bottom line is, why don't more dentists use coaching? It's expensive. It's too expensive. So I wanted to figure out a way to make quality coaching more affordable. And it was really development of AI that allowed us to do that. And so we are rolling out top 10% practice coaching at a quarter of the cost, at about a $5,000 annual fee. That what we did is we worked with 3 different AI models in concert. I have a technology wizard in my work that I work with that did all the tech work. And what they did was they essentially uploaded my 45 years of experiences. I've actually been in over 1,800 practices as a coach. They uploaded all of that experience, the 400 plus practices we've helped successfully resign from PPO plans, all of the podcast episodes, which now number over 1,200, my 24 systems. We've literally got over 60 hours of staff team member training in the form of systems. And then we uploaded all of the methodology. Art, we've talked about this when you and I are together. When I'm working with a coach, we always output a specific action plan on what they need to do to step by step achieve the goals that we've defined. It's a McKinsey level report, that they get.
Right.
And so now imagine that you have access to all of this 24/7, 365, all of that experience. It's not generic AI. It is those 1,800 plus practices of experience. The amount of time I've spent on stage. I'm a guest instructor at Pankey. I get the opportunity to visit Pankey a number of times a year and teach the business and behavioral parts of their curriculum. All of that is
Great.
loaded into the top 10% practice database. And Art, we kind of had some fun with this. You've heard of Chat GTP, of course. Well, we wanted to have a format where any of our members, our top 10% practice members, could ask me a question at any time. It's called, you recognize my initials, Gary Takacs, GT.
Yes, I know where this is going.
It's called Chat GT.
Yeah. You couldn't have bought that.
I couldn't have bought it.
You don't even have to trademark it.
Well, we did. What happened, Art, is, let me give you an example. A typical question might be like this. Gary, I feel like my practice is plateaued. I'm kind of stuck. I feel like there's more gas in the tank, but we're kind of stuck. What should I do? I'll just bounce around different topics. I've got a really strong hygiene department, but I feel like we're not achieving our potential with conservative periodontal therapy. What should I do? I'd like to attract more patients that are interested in my high-value services with dental implants, with treating obstructive sleep apnea, with doing full mouth reconstruction. What should I do? I'm thinking about hiring an associate. How do I know if I'm ready? How do I hire associates so I don't have a revolving glass door of associates that come through? Oh, how about this one, Art? We might have some friends on this one. Well, I'm in my late 50s, early 60s, and I'm thinking about retiring another 4 to 5 years. What do I do at this season of my career to maximize the value of my practice?
That's huge.
You've dealt with that throughout your career.
Oh, once or twice or 1,000 times. Yep, exactly.
I knew there was a sneezer, Art. What have you seen done that you see the doctors start to coast,
That's what they do.
and then what happens to the value of the practice?
They get tired and, oh, I know I could do more, but I'm just, they show up and they're like some of their employees have been there 30 years. They show up and they fill a chair.
Right.
And there's no more passion. I mean, you get to the point after doing anything, many people do, for 30 years and you go, I'm tired of it. I don't want to do it anymore. I want to do, there's got to be more to life. And they don't want to go out and set up a website. They don't want to get involved in social media. They don't want to do the things that they need to do and train their team. And then the leadership goes in the toilet. You and I both know that. They need something. This is kind of a one-stop shopping kit. So, Gary, if someone was interested in that, how do they get a hold of this?
So go to our website, top 10, and we spell the number 10 out, TEN, top10practice.com is the website. Reach out to me. Art, the best way to reach out to me, I'll give you my cell number, Art, and would you publish my cell number in your
Well, I have your cell number. We'll put it in the show notes.
Put it in the show notes, and a text message is a great way. That's my personal cell phone. Feel welcome to reach out to me. Art,
right.
A top 10 practice, the 10 is a reference to top 10%. So the top 10 practice, we have 7 goals for every one of our members. Here's the 7 goals. Number them 1 through 7. They're not numbered in importance. I think they're equally important. Number 1, if you're a solo dentist, practice overhead no higher than 60%. If you have 2 or more dentists in your practice, we want EBITDA of at least 25%. Number 2, I want you to have enough income to eventually create financial independence from your practice. Number 3, I want you to have a state-of-the-art office with all the technology that makes dentistry fun for you and more enjoyable for your patients. So now it just got harder. And control overhead to 60% or less and have EBITDA of at least 25%. Number 4,
it's doable.
It's doable.
It's doable.
I want you to have a high-performance team you truly love and enjoy working with. Number 5, I want you to have patients you enjoy taking care of. You don't have to love them, but I hope you enjoy taking care of your patients. Number 6, I want you to have treatment mix that you enjoy. Whatever dentistry you like to do, I want you to do more of it. And number 7, I want you to have an effective work-life balance. That's what defines a top 10% practice.
Yep.
Those 7 things.
Yep.
Which one's the hardest? Let's back up. Of those 7 goals, which one's most important? I could argue that each one's most important, but I would say number 4, a high-performance team you truly love and enjoy working with. I'd say that's most important because if you don't...
I like 7. I like work-life balance.
I think 4, because if you don't have that one, you'll likely not get the others. Which one's the hardest? I would say it's either number 1 or number 7, because most practices don't have overhead at 60% or less. And sadly, 9 out of 10 dentists report that they don't have an effective work-life balance.
And the fact is that as a dentist owning a practice, and now I'm talking to my listeners, you don't work a 9 to 5 job with a boss that says, wait a minute, you clocked in at 9:02 and you're going to get written up and HR is going to hear about this. You can set your hours. I had doctors who set their hours specifically so they could coach soccer, they could coach baseball, they could coach basketball, and that's how they lived their lives, and they set their vacations. And doctors, you can do that. The problem is if you're giving up 45% of your revenues to an insurance company, you can't afford to go coach your kids soccer because you're not going to be able to pay your payroll. So, that's the deal. Gary, I don't have a lot of time left with you, so I want you to just take a couple minutes and walk through. You said there's 6 steps to get out of insurance dependence, if that's what they choose to do. And I hope today, because, getting out of insurance dependence is a whole series of podcasts and lectures. But, if someone is going to do it, they have a team that they trust, patients trust them. Like you talked about, you have a relationship-driven practice. What is it that these guys, what are the steps real quick? And then we'll call it a podcast.
Number 1, know your data. There's lots of data we need to know. We need to know what the resignation timeline is on the plans that you're participating in. We need to know how many patients we have in each plan, what the PPO adjustment, the discount is. We need to know if it's a solo plan, a silo plan, or if it's part of an umbrella, because that's a changing part of the landscape today when it comes to PPO plans. Some are silo by themselves and others are part of an umbrella. Now, when you're part of an umbrella, sometimes you can resign from individual plans out of an umbrella, and other times you have to, it's all for one and one for all. You got to resign from all of them. So step number 1 is know your data. And there's whole worksheets and workshops around that. Know your data. Secondly, master marketing so you can attract people that are interested in your practice, not just because they have insurance. So number 2 is master marketing. That's another whole outcome in itself. Number 3 is a granular detail. Set up an in-office membership plan. In-office membership plan allows you to attract people that don't have insurance. Let's go find people that don't have, because when they don't have insurance, they don't ask you the question, do you take my insurance? So number 4, fully train your team on all of the verbal skills around how we talk to your patients about this. How do we talk to them about it? How do we answer the question, do you take my insurance? How do we let them know they're still welcome in our practice? How do we roll the red carpet out? Let them know. So fully train your team at every team member. Now, different roles will have different responsibility for that. Number 5, look at ways you can become more relationship driven. You cannot be too relationship driven because when you're relationship driven, people don't want, they're being taken care of by people who they know, like, and trust. They don't want to go anywhere else. So figure out ways you can become more relationship driven in your practice. And number 6 is add high value services. Because when we add things like placing and restoring implants, things like adult orthodontics, things like complex restorative dentistry, cosmetic dentistry, treating obstructive sleep apnea, maybe oral conscious sedation. Maybe our passion is helping patients with TMD, TMJ. Maybe we do the ankyloglossia procedure, the lip and tongue tie release procedure so that infants can nurse. It's funny,
that is a big deal.
I've shared that with clients, and it's funny. Hey, have you ever considered the ankyloglossia procedure, the lip and tongue tie release? And I remember a doctor saying, Gary, I'd rather slam my head in the car door than do that. It's like, well, then that one's not your high value service.
Exactly.
But I've had another doctor that says, you know what? My own son benefited from that and made such a difference in our lives. You're right. I'm going to learn how to do that. Whatever it is, find your lane when it comes to high value service. Those are the 6 steps.
This episode is brought to you by Bank of America Practice Solutions. If you are thinking about starting or growing your dental practice, we would love to help you take the next step. Email us at dg.connect@bofa.com, and we will send you a free business plan template that is perfect for starting the conversation about your future practice. Bank of America Practice Solutions has the expertise, the resources, and the support for your success. Don't wait. Email dg.connect@bofa.com today. Hey, it's Art Wiederman here. I don't recommend products lightly. I only share solutions that can genuinely impact your practice's clinical outcomes and bottom line. That's why I really want to tell you about Interview. They've developed an FDA-cleared technology that measures internal tooth mobility, something that traditional methods just can't detect early enough. Here's what that means for your practice. You can identify cracks and loose restorations before they become emergencies. That means better treatment planning, fewer surprises for your patients, and more predictable case acceptance. Interview integrates right into your existing workflow. No complicated processes, just clever diagnostic information when you need it. If you've been looking for a way to elevate your diagnostic capabilities and strengthen patient trust, book a demo at interview.ai. That's INNERVIEW.ai. Mention my name and you'll get $250 off. That's Interview AI. INNERVIEW.ai. Well, I will tell you, I value our friendship. It's funny. I talked to you a month or so ago. We were on the phone for 3 hours.
Oh,
Do you know that? We were on the phone.
I was lost in just glorious conversation that afternoon, Art.
Oh, it's just wonderful. And you have lots of
Yeah.
friends in the dental profession, and I have lots of friends that we do that with. And it is a gift of what you've given to thousands of dentists. You've changed their lives for the better. One more time, Gary. Doctors, if I got your attention and Gary got your attention about thinking about changing your relationship with insurance, Gary, let me ask you a question. You may or may not know the answer. Is there anything in all of your AI of your new, top 10 service that you've got that talks about how to go out of network with insurance?
Oh, there is
There is. I'm shocked.
there is an amazing amount of content related to that specific topic by itself.
I mean, that in itself for $5,000. Again, I don't have to sell you, Gary. Everybody on the planet knows who you are in the dental profession. But if that's what you're looking to do, what a great way to get that conversation going. And then maybe you need some additional hand-holding help, but everything you're going to need, all the verbal skills. I will tell you, Gary, I use in my lectures. I just lectured at the Chicago Midwinter Conference. I did a Know Your Practice by the Numbers. And one of my slides says, from my friend, Gary Takacs, these are the verbal skills that you give to your patient.
But I mean,
to say, Mrs.
the granular detail, Art, this is very supported. The letter that you send your patients, the verbal skills that we use to work with
It's
our
all
team
there.
members to understand it. The marketing plan that literally goes step by step of how to do it. SOPs, whenever there's a standard operating procedure involved, the chat GT writes up the SOP for you. And it's all customized, Art. It's completely customized because I do an intake process with each client where we get to know the nuances of each client. Dentistry comes in a lot of different flavors. So the fact that this is customized, for example, the amount of the AI that deals with resigning from insurance comes from those 400 plus examples. And in those 400 plus examples, we've encountered virtually everything that you can encounter. Where are the speed bumps? Where are the areas we need more support? What are the things to avoid? All of that is in there. So this isn't a generic,
all there.
it's not a generic, chat or Gemini or Claude. It's literally drawn from my database of 45 plus years of experience. And that, this is my capstone project. And I wanted to really help in this season of my career, help more dentists, reignite the passion. Art, I'll leave your listeners with this thought. Art, I think you'll appreciate this analogy. Can you imagine a dentist is listening to this? Let's reflect back to years ago, and for some it might be just a few years ago, for some it might be many years ago. And maybe you applied to multiple dental schools. Maybe you applied to USC, UCLA, UOP. Maybe you applied to UW. You applied to multiple dental schools. And back in the day, you would get a letter in the mail. Remember the mail, Art?
Yeah, I also have a yellow pages too, but I think I remember.
But you'd get a letter. Today, those are now sent out by email. And you would go to the mailbox and you'd see the letterhead from SC, UCLA, UOP, University of Washington. And you'd nervously hold that letter in your hand. And should I open it? Should I open it? Should I open it? And you open it up and it says, "We are pleased to inform you that you've been accepted." And I would argue that for many dentists, up till that point in their life, that might have been their happiest day of their life. Now, maybe since then that's changed with maybe marriage or birth of children or whatever. But that was going to still be in the top 3 happiest days of your life because the future was filled with unbridled opportunity. It's like, I'm not
Yep.
there yet. I still have to survive dental school. I still have to pass the boards. I still have to figure out what I'm going to do with a career, but I'm a big step forward with what I want to do. And then somehow
Huge.
over time, and it happens fairly quickly, dentists confront reality. They graduate, maybe they go through, 1 or 2 or 10 associateships. And both you and I are the champions of entrepreneurship in dentistry. Both you and I believe that the best path, I think all career paths in dentistry can be rewarding, but we think the best path is to own your own practice.
Absolutely. 100%. 41 years, you and I, but I know
Yeah.
what your exact number is, but yeah, absolutely.
It's
And
46 for me.
46. But
So there we go.
it's wonderful.
Almost 90 years between the two of us.
But the good news, Gary, is you and I both see that there are doctors out there who love what they do, who love coming in their office, who basically walk up to every one of their employees when they walk in. How you doing today? How's your day going? How was your and everything like that? And they love their patients. They hug their patients. And that's what we got to get back to.
I want more
But
of
if
that.
you're in your
I want more of that.
so we need more of that. And the way you're going to get more of that is to be able to spend more. We didn't even talk about spending more time with your patients. If you don't have as many patients and you're getting 45% more fees, you can spend 45% more time with that
Your
patient.
quality of life, your
And
quality of work life just went up.
yeah, exactly. All right, listen, stay with me as I take this podcast out. Thank you so much, Gary Takacs. Basically, doctors, if we got your attention today, take a look at what Gary's rolling out because I haven't seen it because it's brand new.
It's literally being
This is
launched
like
today at the
I feel like I'm Johnny, the Tonight Show, like the brand new, first time ever seen, right?
Well, I wanted to launch this from your podcast, so here we go.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Doctors, thank you for the honor and privilege of your time. I got that saying from the man on the screen here. And I want to tell you that please like us. Please like us. I need friends. I desperately need friends. Nobody likes me. I'm just kidding. Go on Facebook, Instagram, watch us on YouTube, watch us on TikTok. Tell your friends about the podcast. Thanks to our wonderful sponsors, Bank of America Practice Solutions. If you're looking for, to grow or expand your practice, call them. They're the best. The Academy of Dental CPAs, we talked about, that's my home team, www.adcpa.org, and Interview, which is a wonderful, wonderful new device. Look into that. And with that, Gary Takacs, thank you for your friendship of over 40 years. Thank you for everything that you've done for the 200,000 dentists in the United States and all over the world. You're a gift, and your legacy, and I like to think my legacy too, is that we help people. And that's what it really comes down to. And with that, folks, I want to thank you for listening. And this is Art Wiederman for the Art of Dental Finance and Management podcast with Art Wiederman, CPA. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Art.